Hello, so in this video we're going to have a look at some inherited disorders. So this is B13 Lesson 9. I know in your booklets, but it's polydactyly and cystic fibrosis, but I've included some other ones in there as well that I think are useful to know about. Now, as usual, please make sure your phones are off, no TV on, or you're not playing games in the background, and you've got your booklet with you ready as well. If you're ready, we shall begin. So we're going to have a look first at polydactyly. We can get a clue about what it is from the name, poly meaning many, dactyly, we're going to add digits. So it's an inherited condition. We get it from our parents. It's passed down from parents to offspring and so forth. Polydactyly, someone with it has more fingers or toes than usual. Got a picture here of someone with polydactyly. We can see they've got some extra little fingers just there. It's not an issue, doesn't cause any problems. Back in the day, people used to go, oh, you've got an extra finger, you're a witch. Anne Boleyn, who was the second wife of Henry VIII, had polydactyly. She had an extra little finger. There were concerns about her possibly being a witch. That's why if you ever see any paintings of her, she's always got these very long sleeves on her dresses hiding everything. But enough on that. That's completely digressing into history. I'll leave that to the history department to do. They can probably do it a lot better than me. But I can probably do the biology slightly better than they can. Now, polydactyly is caused by a dominant allele. You remember the word allele is a different version of a gene. Dominant means that it's the one that is seen in the phenotype. Meaning that we only need one of the polydactyly genes. So if you are heterozygous for polydactyly, there is a 50% chance your offspring will have polydactyly, as half of your gametes will have the gene. So you can pass it on. We'll draw a genetic cross diagram to show you. And if you're homozygous for polydactyly, then all of your offspring will have polydactyly. All of the gametes will have the gene. So let's just draw a little genetic cross diagram or Punnett square. So I'm going to draw it out. I'm going to use my big P for polydactyly, little p for not having polydactyly. So here we have a parent, or two parents. This one here is heterozygous for polydactyly. This one is homozygous for not having polydactyly. We fill in the gaps. These two here have polydactyly, and they will be heterozygous for polydactyly. Again, they can pass on to their children. It's no issue. These extra digits nowadays can be quite easily removed with surgery and cause no further problems whatsoever. If we're homozygous for polydactyly, so if we had a homozygous person for polydactyly, meaning that both of their parents had it themselves. So we'll have a homozygous person for polydactyly, which is this one here, and a homozygous person for no polydactyly, which is this one here, and fill in the gaps. We see that all of the offspring will be heterozygous for polydactyly. And this is just calculated. You can either try and do it in your head, or the easiest way is to draw these Punnett squares. You can see they don't take long to draw down. All we need to know is make sure we know what homozygous and heterozygous mean, and working out what the dominant and recessive alleles mean. So that's one type of inherited condition caused by a dominant allele. We're now going to have a look at Huntington's disease. Now, Huntington's disease is another inherited condition. Again, it's also caused by a dominant allele. So you need to have one of those genes. Now, a problem with Huntington's disease, it doesn't usually present until someone is in their 40s or potentially even later. So if you have Huntington's disease, you've got a 50, and you're heterozygous for it, you've got a 50% chance of passing it on to your children. Problem is, you might not know you've got it until you're in your 40s, by which point a number of people have already had children, so potentially already passed it on. Sad thing about Huntington's disease is that it affects the nervous system. It causes it to gradually decrease in function, so we lose movement, sensations, so feelings, control of limbs, and eventually affects the respiratory system. People struggle to breathe, and it does lead to death. There is no cure for it. It's only been very recently that we've got better at diagnosing this earlier, so people with it can go, okay, I've got it, I'm not going to have children because I don't want to pass it on to them, or I'm going to go through a lot of genetic screening to make sure that any of my children definitely don't have this disease. It's a very, very sad one. Thankfully, though, it is very, very rare. Next one we're going to look at is cystic fibrosis. Now, you might have heard of cystic fibrosis before. There's about 10,000 people in the UK who have cystic fibrosis. And it's another inherited disease. It's caused by, this time, a recessive allele. So recessive allele, it means you need both alleles to be CF. Need both of them to be CF to have CF. Otherwise, you are what we call a carrier. You carry the gene, but you're not affected by it. Now, CF, it stops certain substances moving across the cell membrane. The cell membranes, those bits controlling what goes in and out of the cell, it stops things moving across so well. Mainly the sodium ions struggle to move across as well. And as a result, the mucus in the body can get very, very sticky. Mucus is a bit disgusting, but we need it. We have it in down the back of our throat, in our lungs, to speed up respiratory or gas exchange and to trap any bacteria. If it's too sticky, gas exchange is slowed down and bacteria can get in a lot easier because it moves a bit slower. It affects the lung, it affects the digestive system, it also affects enzyme production as well. So people with CF don't produce enough enzymes, especially for digestion. And they are usually infertile. Not all of them, but usually they are infertile. Bit of interesting thing here, so it's an inheriting condition. It's pretty much only seen in Caucasians, so Northern Europeans for the most part. There are some cases in other races as well, but they're a slightly different form of it, more caused by a mutation as opposed to being inherited. And one of the things they think that people were carriers, so they carried the gene, and if you carried that gene, you were immune to things like typhoid and other sort of diseases. So it was sort of this way of going, actually, I'll have the gene, but not the negative side of being ill with it and having cystic fibrosis, but it will make me immune to typhoid, which was quite useful, which is why it's present in Northern Europeans, because typhoid was sort of fairly common in Northern Europeans, so we evolved to not get it. Now, because it is recessive, we need both parents to be carriers of the gene to pass it on. So because they're carriers, they have the gene, but because it's recessive, they're not affected by it. So we're going to have a look at the chance of two carriers of the cystic fibrosis gene having a child with cystic fibrosis. So we'll use a big C for the normal gene and a little c for the CF gene. So we'll have a big C and a little c, a big C and a little c. So both parents are heterozygous, and we'll see what happens. So we have a big C and a big C. This one here, not even a carrier. Big C, little c, big C, little c, and little c and little c. And we can now see what happens. So we've got this one here. We have a 1 in 4 chance of having CF. Abbreviating cystic fibrosis to CF. We've got a 2 in 4, or 50% chance, of being a carrier. O on the end. And a 1 in 4 chance of no CF gene. Now, obviously, if parents had a child, they were both carriers and didn't realise they had a child who had CF, they would probably get their other children tested to see if they were carriers as well. Because this could affect their decision to have children in the future as well, knowing that they were a carrier for an inherited disease. We're now going to look at sickle cell disease. Apologies for dipping this to appear in a minute, but this is what sickle cell disease looks like. It's another inherited condition, again caused by a recessive allele. Now, someone with sickle cell has red blood cells that are sickle shaped. So this one here, they're the wrong shape. This is our normal red blood cell, that biconcave disc, carries lots of oxygen and can fit in small places. This one will carry less oxygen and can also cause blockages in capillaries, which leads to something called a crisis, which is where there's a lot of pain and oxygen can't get to the place where it's needed. People with sickle cell, again, would normally die younger than the general population. They're also more at risk of infections as well. Just like with CF, without being a bit of immunity by being a carrier, sickle cell, if someone is a carrier for sickle cell but doesn't have it, they have immunity to malaria. As such, sickle cell disease is very, very common in sub-Saharan Africa, or people of that descent. People around the Mediterranean, where there's still the risk of malaria, there's something called thalassemia, which is similar to sickle cell but slightly different, but does the same sort of thing. Again, it's inherited and it's a recessive allele. It's that bit of evolution to protect us, at the risk of potentially infecting one of your own children. But if it's only a 1 in 4 chance, nature's sort of going, oh, okay, we'll take that way. Again, both parents need to be carriers for the sickle cell gene to pass it on. We'll draw a quick one here. So they need to be big S and little s, big S and little s. The big S is the normal gene, little s is the sickle cell gene. So we can fill it in. Oops, little s. This one here has sickle cell disease. There's a whole load on hemoglobinopathies. If you want to know more about it, do come and speak to me. I find it very, very interesting. I've done a lot of work on it. So, last bit then, before you do your questions. Treating inherited conditions. So, some of them, like polydactyly, are very easy to treat and live with. You can either just remove the extra digit or just live with it. It's fine. Causes no problems if it stays. Causes no problems if it's removed either. So it's fine, not really an issue. Other ones such as Huntington's, CF and sickle cell are a lot harder to treat. We can treat the symptoms, but we can't get rid of it. It often leads to the person dying at a younger age than the general population. So Huntington's is normally around the age of 50. People die for cystic fibrosis and sickle cell. Life expectancy at the moment is about 60. So it's still pretty good, but definitely younger than the general population. And there are more risks. There's more to be in hospital as well, and are often on a lot of medication quite regularly. We can do some genetic counselling and prenatal screening, which is offered to parents who have those genes. So if they know someone in their family has it, they can get screened themselves and they can have something called genetic counselling. We'll do a little bit of work on that in the next lesson, looking at all different types of screening to get an idea of what's going on there. And there is research ongoing to see whether we can do something called gene replacement therapies, whereby we remove the gene. We remove that allele that causes Huntington's, CF or sickle cell to see whether it can be used to cure it. At the moment, that's still being researched. We have used bone marrow transplants, so whereby we remove all of the bone marrow from a person and for someone with sickle cell and give them new bone marrow. Therefore, they make new red blood cells that aren't sickle cell shaped. Problem with that is that's a very dangerous procedure and can lead to death as well. So it's only done in very, very severe cases. Again, if you want to know more about that, do come and speak to me. I will happily talk at you for hours about that. I find it very, very interesting, and the research is great that is going on with it. So you're now going to have a go at doing some questions. I've missed out question 1 from your booklet. It's just definitions, and I'm sure you know those already, but do double check them. So please pause the video now, have a go at answering the questions either in your booklet or in the class notebook. You should now only be playing the video and listening to my voice if you've answered these questions. The answers are here. Pause it to check your answers and self-mark. So they don't need to be word for word, exactly the same as mine. This is the general idea of what you want. Now I'm going to look at the last two questions. Apologies, that diagram is quite small on here. The ones who are in pink have polydactyly. The ones who are blue don't. Pause the video, make sure you've got your answers done. You can now mark your answers. So pause the video to check your answers. So thank you very much for watching. I hope it has been informative. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It gets us up to that little bit more and makes me look good if I get more people to subscribe. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.